Good afternoon, everybody. This is me, Mohammed Timri again. Hi, and welcome to Timur's Corner. I decided to make this video and actually talk to you about what is the effect of a can of Coke on your body. Now, if you like this video, just let me know in the comments section, and I'll be sure to respond to you. Um, Given that we have COVID and COVID is going around, and of course, certain people who have certain conditions, tend to have a higher risk or more prevalence of getting something. And I wanted to touch on type 2 diabetes in this case. Now, if you're somebody who had type 2 diabetes or you currently have it, let me know about it and how does it feel in terms of if you have perhaps contracted COVID-19 and what you're currently doing right now. Now, on average, our body, when we get hungry, and that happens approximately every 4 hours. Now, that is, you're not dieting, on average, you're just eating. So every 4 hours, we get hungry. Our fuel reserves are down, we get hungry, we eat, and our sugar and every levels, they just come back to normal. Now, when you eat and, we drink, we all love to enjoy the occasional can of Coke or Pepsi or anything else. So in this case, Coke. So if you're somebody who drinks Coke more often and you're a Coke enthusiast, so when you flip the can and it shows on the back, it shows high fructose corn syrup. And a lot of you may have, heard about this or seen this. Now, what is that exactly? High fructose corn syrup, it is derived from corn, as the name says. Now, but it's genetically modified, meaning that it switches between two compounds known as fructose and glucose. So we have two groups of, mainly three groups, but so-called monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. But I'm going to touch on mono and poly. With polysaccharides, we're talking about like complex sugars. Complex sugars are really good. Like, so for example, starch is derived from plants. But starch is a better alternative, for example, to high fructose corn syrup. So that would be good. Now, our body can only process and can only absorb simple. So whether you eat food that has sugar of any kind of type, your body breaks it down into simple sugars, and our simple sugars are then being absorbed by our GI intestinal cells via the SGLT1, which is a symporter, and it's both and it actually uses sodium, as well as you have the GLUT5, which is purely for fructose. So these are the two receptors. So these are known as the symporters. So yeah, for glucose and galactose, we both use SGLT1. Now for the fructose, we use GLUT5. So they're absorbed at the apical surface, and they go down the cell, and then they are absorbed from the bottom. They're absorbed by GLUT2, which then they enter into the blood and go throughout our entire system. Now, why is it so sweet? Because the sweetness comes actually because it's switching between fructose and glucose. Fructose is slightly sweeter than glucose. They are structural isomers of each other, meaning that they have the same 6-carbon compound, the 6-carbon backbone, but it has a slightly different configuration. So it switches between the two. That's why it is so sweet, and you get addicted to it, and it feels great. Well, it may feel great, but over long term, it is not so great. Because normally our body, as I said before, when you eat every 4 hours, your body produces the normal amount of insulin as it should. Now, if you drink Coke more than one can a day, or again, you're a Coke enthusiast and you keep drinking it for long term and you drink a lot, what happens is that every time you drink it outside of this normal period, it causes these spikes of insulin. Is that a good thing? Not really. Short term, it's not such a big deal. But if you have been drinking for years and years, over long term, what happens is that all these little spikes, as I said, is like loosely use the word, it's like a shock to the body, and it keeps producing these insulin spikes. So over long term, you can develop type 2 diabetes. The cutoff point in terms of age is 30. So if you're below 30, you're likely to get type 1 diabetes. If you're above 30, you're likely to get type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is associated with two genetic markers, so-called HLA-DR3 and HLA-DR4. These two are the most common genetic markers that are associated with type 2 diabetes. Now with type 2 diabetes, once you get it, Can you get rid of it? Yes, you can. The number one, so-called, as we normally speak, drug of choice is not pharmaceutical, simply run or jog. Go for a 30-minute run, or if you work out in the morning, an hour run, walking, jogging, running, just as long as you have some sort of activity going on. What you're doing is when you do that, you upregulate the receptor known as GLUT4. So GLUT4 receptors are upregulated on two aspects, on your liver and on your skeletal muscles. So type 2 diabetes is also known as insulin resistance. Why? Type 1, you don't produce any insulin at all. Your cell, it's an autoimmune disease, which means your body is recognizing a part of itself as foreign. So it's known as beta cell. So our body kills off our beta cells. So you start producing insulin. Not immediately, but over long term, finally you shut it off. In type 2, you do produce insulin. Problem is, your body doesn't respond to it. That's why they also tend to call type 2 diabetes as diabetes or insulin resistance. Because the GLUT4s are resistant to insulin. Now, when you work out, what do? Because in your body, the proportion of your responders that say we're not taking up into insulin, when you work out, you upregulate receptors. So you increase the likelihood of the number of receptors that do respond to insulin. So key point is, so in other words, when you work out, you increase your chances that when insulin is ejected, your body will respond to it. So when your body responds to it, so-called your glycemic control, you being able to control your level of glucose, normalizes. Over time, give 6 months, perhaps longer. Acute is about 6 months. That's about short term. But over the course of a long time, when you keep running, jogging, running, 30 minutes walk, an hour jogging, you sweat, you feel good, you come home, and so you upregulate those receptors and you make your body's resistance reduce. So you're able to pick up the glucose much more better, and you're able to better control your sugar level. And therefore, you reduce the risk of all these organs that are affected by glucose over long term. You prevent damage to your heart, you prevent damage to your brain, you prevent damage to your eyes, you prevent damage to your kidney, and so forth. To your nerves, you can get neuropathy, like tingling problems, which are demyelination of your nerves. So that's the number one choice. Now, for people who tend to run and they cannot, after long term, when they run and they cannot control their blood sugar levels, then yes, you have to go and consider pharmaceutical intervention. Now, if you're a type 2 diabetic and you're not on any kind of drug, your chances of getting COVID-19 does not increase. However, having said that, if you contract COVID, it is much harder and it progresses much more aggressively. That is not good. So this is an educated it's an educated guess, and it also is based on research when we that was suggested research, and in some cases it was if you happen to have, but again, COVID is having so many variants. We have, as you all know, at this point, we have more than one type of COVID, and every time it keeps evolving and going through mutation, it only keeps getting more deadlier. I should say, deadlier, and of course, it gets faster. As I mentioned in my last video, the number of the latest one, which was the Lambda, as I was mentioning, it is like between 50 to 300 times it is faster in terms of transmissibility. From day one, the issue with this virus wasn't that it was necessarily deadly. COVID has been around for a very long time. The name COVID, it's called COVID-19, not because, as some news channels, they love to sensationalize and throw some politics into it. It's not because we have 18 types of COVIDs. It's because it was in the year 2019. It was discovered in so-called wet markets in the city of Wuhan in China. It was discovered there. Now, it was discovered in the year 19. It was discovered in the year 2019, and it is coronavirus. So that's why they've given the name or WHO in order not to, for political purposes and also for just, for a stigma, not to touch onto. So they try to make sure that they name it without having to, stigmatize China and, the politics that revolves around it between US and China blaming each other about being responsible partly or fully for the virus. So they ended up calling it CO as in COVID, CO as in Corona, and the 19 because it was discovered in the year 19. So not because there are 18 variants and this one happens to be 19. So after 19, so what happened with COVID-19 is that it wasn't the sheer fact that it was so much dangerous because it's been around for a very long time, coronavirus. But the fact that this type COVID-19, the speed at which it was transmitting from one person to the next person, if you don't control that, you spread it. So the newest one and all the other ones tend to only speed up and speed up and speed up. So God knows what's going to be the next speed of the next variant because they're talking, I think, like right now about even Lambda. I don't know the speed about that one. So if you are currently a diabetic and you got rid of it, let me know and let me know how that how that was, or if you have COVID-19, or if you are diabetic and you happen to catch um, uh, COVID-19, what were your symptoms? Just tell me about your experience and how that went, and if you have it right now, what are you currently doing? So if you're a type 2 diabetic, and you have COVID-19, what are you currently doing to treat it? I would like to know. Now, also, as a last thing is that I stopped actually to um, I've drank Coke for a very long time, and I stopped taking Coke for about 4 months now, and I feel great. My recommendation to you is that as an alternative, if you'd like, is that instead take Mexican Coke. Mexican Coke is much better alternative. Why? Because it comes from, yes, it's made by the same it's made by the same Coca-Cola company, but because it comes from Mexico, they use the cane sugar, brown sugar, natural sugar instead of the corn syrup, derived from corn syrup. So the Mexican Coke has the natural sugar. It's much better. For those of you who've been drinking Coke for a very long time, when you switch to it and you try that out, you'll notice the difference in flavor. So that's one way to go. The other way to go is if you don't like high fructose corn syrup, but you do like to drink the occasional Coke. Another thing you can do is not a cure, but can you get rid of the high fructose corn syrup? Yes, you can. You can drink, for every one Coke you drink, you got to eat a couple of pounds of cheese. It gets rid of it. The other one is switch over to more better versions, which is which is the complex ones, so starch. And there are also more other type of complex sugars. So eat those. Why is complex starch good? Is because of the way it is arranged. It has a little sugar at the core, and it has glucose monomers around it. So it's like a network. That's why it's called a complex. So it branches out. Because of the way it's designed and its form, it actually takes up less space and is better stored in our body. So the alternatives are, like switch to Mexican Coke, do starch, which I highly recommend for those of you who are very health conscious. That's that's another way to go about it. So just tell me know what you think of this video. If there's anything you want me to expand on, and I'll be posting more videos in the future about other topics. Or if you guys want, you can actually suggest me a topic, and I can touch on that if you like something. So if you like a topic for me to talk about, just let me know. Until then, take care, and hopefully, oh yeah, just don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Timor's channel. Thank you.